Hey guys, so this is our decade recap podcast. It ended up being so long that we had to cut it into two shows. This first one covers the most influential and most overrated movies of the decade. Karla wasn't able to Skype in, but she recorded her answers separately, so you'll hear hers too. Hope you enjoy this show as much as we did. Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman. Today we are doing the decade recap. The recap of the 2010s. And I'm joined by Mason Laferty.
Hello there, I'm Mason. I'm a advertising and theater major at Suffolk University in Boston.
And returning guest, Jelani Kelly.
Hey.
So normally I'd like to think that the show is pretty analytical and pretty level-headed. Today we're doing none of that. Today is just opinions that need zero justification for the most part. There might be a little analysis, but mostly it's just going to be opinions. So I sent out a survey to a bunch of people and just tried to get a good look at the decade as a whole. So there's 9 questions. We're going to try to get through as many of them as we can. The only thing in terms of spoilers, I am probably going to spoil Get Out at one point. I'll give fair warning for it. And then we'll probably end up spoiling, if you haven't seen Star Wars or any Marvel movies at this point, we can assume that you're not a real fan, so we're not gonna worry about spoilers for that.
I'll probably slip up and spoil 90% of what I talk about, but I'll try not to.
Okay, and that might happen with other stuff too, but I think
you guys have had a decade to watch everything. You're good.
Yeah, but maybe more recent stuff. We'll try to give spoilers for stuff that came out this year. I think
that's fair.
We'll maybe avoid stuff with Joker or Rise of Skywalker. Okay, so we have 9 categories. We're gonna do influential, overrated, underrated, worst you didn't see, character, scenes, best by year, and favorite. And I'm also just going to real quick list off everyone who answered the poll. Big thanks to everyone who did. So we had 3 anonymous people: Mike Raffle, who came on for the Endgame episode, John DiLoretto, Kelsey Hendry, Seth Hugg, Tabena Odua, William Marlier, Joe Sleeman, Angel Chasko, Tom Dragna, Carson Badami, Ann Sleeman, Natalia, I'm going to mess this up, Zietzik, Sarah Miller, and then my whole family, so both my parents, and then my brother Colin, and my sisters Malia, Lauren, and Amanda. Not everyone answered everything, but every one of those answered at least something. So we're going to go around. We'll start with Jelani, and then Mason will give his answers, and then I'll give everyone else's, and then add mine to the end of those. So starting with most influential.
Okay, so moving on to most influential movies of the decade, I would say the first one would be Inception. That one got a lot of people going. That film, alongside of its large length, it was a pretty long movie. It introduced an entire new forms of thinking within film, in the sense that the sets were 10 times more detailed, and more detailed in the sense that everything was calculated in a way that the film and cinematography represented the plot, in the sense that the rooms are spinning, that things are exploding in slow motion, meanwhile the characters are still in motion. And the plot itself is pretty unique, because you don't really see these many type of action movies with this plot, other than, along the same lines as The Matrix, and these movies that there's a problem, space and time is kind of like a helpful factor, but it also is the enemy. And I don't know, I thought Leo did a really good job. Ellen Page also phenomenal in this movie. And yeah, I thought that was a very influential film. People were going crazy over it, and I think, again, mainly because it was a different idea, and because it was different from what was happening in that year compared to all the other movies that were coming out. Number 2 would definitely have to be Scott Pilgrim. I think for more of the indie community, and I think for more of the underground community, Scott Pilgrim was an essential movie and influence, especially for that year. Also, just because kind of the comic book come to life type thing that isn't Marvel or DC. I think Scott Pilgrim really nailed it, and I thought it influenced a lot of people, especially in my generation. Or in our generation. Third one would definitely be Toy Story 3. That was kind of like the peak of Toy Story. You know, of course, we all grew up with Toy Story, so the third one to come out in our decade was pretty awesome. There wasn't a single dry eye in the theater when we were watching it. A lot of, you know, aspects of the film hit some chords for a lot of people, so I think that's why it was very influential. And again, it was more of a nostalgic factor, you know, remembering our childhood and having that kind of resurface with the Toy Story franchise, throwing another movie out. I thought that was great. Toy Story 4, definitely not great. Can't even compare, I thought. So that's why, again, Toy Story 3 was kind of the peak and final moment for the Toy Story franchise, at least for my generation. Not to be the voice of my generation, but... Fourth one would definitely be Whiplash. That was a crazy film that you know, again, it's a new concept that was thrown into the mix. The way that was shot, absolutely phenomenal. Damien Chazelle, you know, great French-American director. To cast J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller into their roles, that was a very, very good move. Also, just the intensity of the film and the representation of jazz and being a musician in a group, it represented a lot of band nerds, basically. And the struggles they have in order to reach greatness and in order to push themselves to be that great musician. You know, I thought it was a phenomenal film. Also, big props to the editing team for being able to cut back and forth to not only different instruments and you know, while Teller is playing, but also to cut between glances of J.K. Simmons to different people, even the audience, you know, and it was just a really great film, and I thought it was a very influential film. And finally, would definitely be The Social Network. I thought that was a huge influence. You know, it came out when Facebook was booming, when everyone, even your mother, had a Facebook account. You know, so it told the story of Facebook. It told the story of Mark Zuckerberg, and it was really well made. The actors in it, perfect. You know, Jesse Eisenberg does look like Mark Zuckerberg in a lot of senses. And yeah, I thought that was one of the biggest, most talked films of the year when it came out. So very influential.
Jay, what do you have for that?
I went with number 1, The Avengers, number 2, Get Out, number 3, Logan, number 4, Wonder Woman, and number 5, Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Okay, so 2 of those were echoed by a lot of people. I said The Avengers, and so did Carson,
I did
Tom. Too. You did too? Okay. Anonymous 2 and John DiLoretto all said those. So do you want to elaborate on that? Oh, and also a lot of people said Get Out. I did, and then Tom, Carson, Natalia. Natalia didn't. Angel did, and Anonymous 3. And then your other ones were what? Logan?
Yeah, Logan, Wonder Woman, Force Awakens.
So, like, what did you interpret influential as? Because I didn't, say, how to interpret it. I feel like it was a little ambiguous.
I think I just thought what might have influenced movies to come in the future back when these movies were coming out. The Avengers, of course, influenced, themselves to do more team-up movies, like Marvel, to do more team-up movies, and then influenced DC to try and rush out Justice League and Suicide Squad, which are both kind of team-up movies.
Yeah, that was definitely a bad effect of the Avengers, was how DC took it.
But the Avengers also showed, I think it brought heroes into mainstream by putting them all together to show, these movies could be like the comics people used to read, while also reaching out to a wide range of audiences.
Yeah, for sure. You could say that, without Iron Man, you have no MCU.
Right.
But I would argue that, Avengers had to work. If Avengers didn't work, then we would never have gotten... we would have gotten more. Maybe we would have gotten to Endgame, but it definitely wouldn't have been as big as it was if people didn't really like Avengers the way they did.
Right.
That was why I put that one too.
It definitely attracted larger named actors to the Marvel franchise, I would say, too, because they started getting bigger names after that.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that, but they had big ones, but like Jeremy Renner, I wouldn't say is like an A-lister, and he was up there, which I guess doesn't really speak too badly toward it. But then after that, you get like a lot of big people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's hard to think of anyone now who hasn't been in a Marvel movie who's like a big name. What about some of the other ones for that?
I said Logan because I think there might have been a few movies before this. I couldn't think of them. But I think Logan was the best example of, like, character study superhero movies. And I was going to put Joker here, but I think Logan did it first. You know, both movies were really good. Yeah, that's essentially why I put that there. It influences these comic book companies to take a step back instead of... I think that's what influenced DC to... It was DC that made Joker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Joker is a DC character, but I don't remember ever seeing, like, those logos that they normally put at the beginning of their movies.
It's actually it's a new sect of DC that they're going to start doing singular movies like this that are character studies. It's called DC Black. It's a darker tone of the series, so they're going to be disassociated with the other movies in the franchise, like Wonder Woman and all of those, and be individual studies. So if this Matt Reeves Batman film works out that's coming out, they're going to do one for the Riddler and Penguin. So it'll be interesting to see if that works out.
Yeah, that sounds like a good approach because, like, I mean, it's no secret that the DCEU is, like, not in the greatest shape and not very well respected.
That's generous of you. That's an understatement, I would say.
I'm sure it's not the worst that's been said about it.
I'm filtering myself from what I would say, but...
Yeah. So then you had, what was it, Wonder Woman, Get Out, and... Well, I mean, elaborate on either of those if you want to.
I think Wonder Woman... Well, I want to say it showed that superhero females could be good leads in these superhero movies as well. Because up until this point, I think we only had the male leads like Thor, Captain America, Superman, and Man of Steel, and all these other heroes. And now, since then, we had... I think Captain Marvel was after Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah, that was this year. Or last year now, I guess.
Yeah, now we have that Black Widow trailer that looks awesome. Yeah, that's why I put that up there.
Yeah, and I didn't see Wonder Woman, but from what I've heard, I mean, it's far from perfect, but it's a lot better than most of the DCEU and was like kind of like after Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, it kind of saved them in a way where it was like, okay, these can actually be decent. And like kept them afloat too. Yeah. So like it wasn't just that it was the first, it was like the first and it was pretty good. Yeah. What about for Get Out?
I think it just influenced horror movies to try and be smarter now. I feel like there was a few years before this where horror movies, they were just crapping them out and it was just trash after trash. And I'm not even like a horror movie buff, but when I'd see the trailers for these stupid movies, I'd be like, well, that just looks really ridiculous. I don't know who'd want to go see that. But I actually went to go see this based off a recommendation from my roommate back sophomore year. It changed the way I looked at horror movies, and I think it changed horror movies for the future. Try to enlighten the audience try to enlighten audiences to look at life a little differently, because it used racism as a horror element for this movie, and it changed horror movies for the future.
Yeah, I would definitely echo all of that. I wasn't thinking of it as much in terms of like horror movies, but like I do agree, because like there's been a lot that's come out since then, like Hereditary, Midsummer this past year. I mean, a few others. I haven't really seen any of them, but like it did seem to kind of re-legitimize horror as like, okay, we can make something that's not just jump scares and stuff. Especially with the amount that like Blumhouse has used it for advertising. Like literally every movie they come out with, it's the studio that brought you Get Out. Like they're gonna keep pushing that. And I think too, like it's sparked a new wave of like last year we had Sorry to Bother You, Hate You Give. I don't know if I want to put Black Klansman in this category too, but it's like more prescient, racially driven movies, because like, I mean, Green Book I think would have come out without it, but I don't think you get Sorry to Bother You if you don't have Get Out. And like it kind of proved that like, one, we need more of these stories. Two, people will definitely turn out for this because it made so much money, Get Out did. And like I think that's something that's going to carry into this coming decade. I mean, some of those are really good, and I don't think we need another Green Book. I think we need more Get Outs.
Public opinion was not good on Green Book at all. I would say Oscar-wise, in the way the Academy looked at Green Book, very happy with it. But at least the Twitter community and the Reddit community hated Green Book.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it yet, but I didn't think it deserved Best Picture, just from what I heard. Like, it seemed pretty generic. I mean, I'm sure Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen are awesome in it because they're both really good actors. But, like, it didn't seem that original to me. Whereas, like, another one from last year was Blind Spotting. I'm mostly thinking of this because I think right after Green Book won Best Picture, someone at the Triangle, or maybe a couple people, wrote an article about, like, all these should have... They're at least a lot more relevant movies about like racial issues that are like current, whereas Green Book is just kind of like, I don't want to speak too much on it because I haven't seen it, but like it didn't seem that relevant. And that's kind of what they were harping on, that like even though it's more of an awards bait movie, it's not really something that necessarily is like that original and not that necessary of a story, whereas like Blind Spotting, that got no attention, probably is. Jay, what was your last one?
I said The Force Awakens. I guess I just think Star Wars itself as a franchise is influential. I thought it like not reinvented Star Wars, but showed that it could still be relevant in today's climate. And before that, how long had it been since, I forgot when the last one came out.
I think it was 10 years. Okay. I'm pretty sure Revenge of the Sith was 2005.
Right, yeah.
And, like, people hated the prequels, too, so...
Could have been way longer than that because the way they rushed this series in the script writing, if they had one coherent script of these three movies, they would have made a tremendous difference. But I will save my opinion on what Disney's been doing lately till we get into that.
Yeah, I am still detoxing from Rise of Skywalker.
I didn't see the movie, but I wanted to spoil it for myself because I knew I wasn't going to see it in theaters before I saw somebody spoil it online. So I saw what the spoilers were for that, and I was just like, really?
Yeah, it's...
Well, if you want to get a good idea of the script, find your average 13-year-old and what they write on Reddit, and I'm pretty sure they just copy-pasted that and then... put J.J. Abrams' name on it and called it a day.
And couple that with the worst dialogue and most incoherent stuff you've ever heard.
I wish I had the confidence of the screenwriter to give about 100 huge character moments, but with no build-up or justification. No build-up or justification.
Jay, do you have any other like honorable mentions or anything else you want to say?
Not for most influential, no.
Okay, so Mason, what were your picks then?
So these are going to be the most... probably mainstream ones I'm going to talk about because I have a very, again, I'll quote again, pretentious film opinion for the most part. So the way I looked at influential was how they're going to inspire the future climate of film, not just relegated to the decade, of course. But the earliest one, I will agree, Avengers had tremendous influence on the decade. I'm going to say that's a good and a bad thing, because I feel the film climate has become so heavily superhero populated that it's dwindled the success of smaller box office films.
Hard agree.
Because I think there are so many phenomenal smaller budget films such as Can You Ever Forgive Me, which I'll bring up later, The Favorite, films like that. People in their 20s and teenage years aren't flocking to see these films. They're flocking for the multi-marketed Avengers movie because you can't turn a channel without a trailer for one of them, and they're pumping them out every year, and cinemas are just selling out with these, but it's drawing attention away from the smaller climate, which is what Martin Scorsese has famously talked about and his strong dislike for these movies. Now, I don't dislike them. I think they're incredibly influential. I think they're a huge part of the film genre lately, but I would put them more in the movie genre than the film genre. I'm very big on that differentiation on what's a movie and what's a film. That's not saying they're bad. I'm just saying there's more context to other things. I would also put Joker on most influential. So Joker, the way I look at that, phenomenal, beautiful film, wrong time for it. I think that is going to age very, very well. I think it's going to be analyzed in acting studies, film studies, theater classes for years to come. but I think couldn't have been released at a worse time for the public opinion of it, at least, because the uproar it sparked when I saw it in Boston, and there were cops inside the theater the first week of the show because they were so worried about something happening.
Oh, really?
Because of all the they had full squad of police in the movie theater for that movie. Full squad.
Wow.
Yeah, there were full search downs. It was the most security I've ever seen in there. But I think the influence that's going to have on shifting the way DC makes films and the way character studies are done, because that's not limited to superhero movies. That was one tremendous character study by Joaquin Phoenix, and he didn't even do method acting for that. He would be off character on set. Now, I would assume that he would have been in character the entire time, because I don't break character for the most part. You've seen me work on a show before. You know I'm obnoxious, where I will not break character the week of the show. And I just found it impressive the way he handled that. A Star is Born I had on there, too. This is the one
real
good
quick,
thing.
Mike Raffle echoes you on Joker.
Good.
I
put A Star is Born's on there, too.
Yeah, that's echoed also by Anonymous 2, Joe, Malia, and Lauren.
No,
All
I'm
said
not
that.
saying a ton of good things are going to come out of it, but I'm going to say that a lot of people talked about it. It influenced the public opinion a lot. I can't turn on a radio station without hearing, what's that song called?
Shallows.
Shallows on, if I go to one more karaoke night in Boston and hear someone sing Shallow, I'm going to just buy earplugs permanently, because no one sings it on key either. I'm just going to point that out. But Bradley Cooper, for someone who doesn't sing, his vocal coach is a very interesting guy. He actually only trains singers who have no vocal ability or previous context of singing. Trained him for it. I think his performance was phenomenal. And I wasn't big on Lady Gaga till this movie. I'm still not huge on her old stuff. But
I kind of came back around to her old stuff in the past year or so. Not because of Star is Born, but...
Her acting in this was so believable, and they threw a lot of lines at each other that weren't in the script. Like that whole bathroom scene when he looks at her and goes, "You know you're ugly." That wasn't scripted, so that reaction from him was real because he knew how self-conscious she was about that. Making choices like that in films of throwing something at another actor, improving like that, ad-libbing, phenomenal. I just think that could inspire better remakes. Because we saw a lot of meh remakes this decade. I think that could inspire good remakes.
And that was a super solid one. And, like, we talked about that on the show already, that, like, it did a really good job. Like, not just with performances, like, it's just a solid
tight script,
all-around
too.
movie. Yeah,
tight
great
script, very tight script.
Great script.
And Get Out, I also had on there. So Get Out, I think, echoes back to the psychological thriller. I don't even think I'd call it a horror, but I think a psychological thriller. The way it was written sort of reminded me of Stanley Kubrick in a way, because it analyzes the mind and the thought process. Jordan Peele wrote a very original script from considering, not that his comedy wasn't great before, but this was such a different level where he wasn't too heavily involved with the marketing at first, I would say. And then after the movie, the public opinion of him has changed very much from just looking at him as a comedian to a serious writer. Now he's working with the Twilight Zone. So his career is going to be very, very healthy after this.
Yeah, he had Us this past year, which I didn't see, but, like, people turned out for that a lot. And
didn't like Us as much as Get Out.
That's what I've heard.
I think it was rushed. I really think it was rushed.
Yeah, I've heard it's not as good, but, like, Get Out is good enough that I'll see 2 or 3 bad Jordan Peele movies before I write him off. It gave me a pretty big grace period with him.
I don't think
also,
he's Daniel
have
Kaluuya
3
bad movies.
I don't think he will either.
I don't think he will. And I think Daniel has a great career in front of him, too.
Oh, God.
I mentioned him on this list again. He is... That teacup scene in that movie, oh, my God. The way his eyes are bulging and it's so believable.
Yeah.
The fear in his eyes. Fear is very hard to act. That's why horror movies always flop for the most part. Because fear isn't always a believable thing you can translate to screen. He did that so well, so props to him.
He's also just he played it so that he's someone you want to root for. Like, and I think part of that is because his character is smart, whereas most horror movie characters are, like, really dumb. Like, he makes all the right decisions in that movie in terms of, like, staying out of danger. I think that helps, but also Daniel Kaluuya just makes him so believable. He's pretty mellow, but, like, you can see what he's thinking, like, the whole time. Like, all his, like, little subtle reactions. I I'll see just about anything with Daniel Kaluuya now because of that movie.
There's a really good analysis of the film on another podcast called Dead Meat. They only do horror podcasts for the most part. But it's interesting to listen to, and I recommend you do. It talks about all the metaphors in the movie. There are so many very hard to pick up on subtle metaphors in it. In his performance, in the way the script is written, where it's a lot more serious than it comes off as, even though it's already a serious film. But the underlying tones that are also there, I highly recommend looking up.
Okay. Did you have any other choices for influential? Or
No, I didn't do a fifth because I don't really see too much influence this decade, so I skipped that one for the most part.
Okay. I'm just going to list off my 3. Normally I'm going to do mine last, but just because all 3 of my other picks were echoed by other people. So I said Avengers, I said Get Out, and then Inception. Obviously, Inception is going to come up all over the place for me this show. Inception, I think, is influential, if only for the sound effect with the blah. Like that. That shows up everywhere.
I was going to put it there for that.
Yeah. Like, as soon as that came out, every trailer had the blah. Like, everything had that. And also, I think it showed us, like, what a 2010's movie looked like. Nobody really tried to copy it, at least not that I saw, but maybe, well... But it did seem to spark, I don't think we feel it so much now. From maybe like 2011 to 2015, there were a lot of like sci-fi movies that I feel like were trying to be smart in a similar way. Limitless or like Source Code. I didn't see it, but like Chappie, I feel like was kind of the last cry of that. There were a lot of things like that came out. I think we can credit Inception for that.
I think they also started a very specific color tone to film. They had this gray, grainy texture. And the color palette was this very bleak, bluish gray, as I said, amount to it, which with the exception of Chappie, I would say all those movies you listed have that same color palette. And it's
like really toned down.
2014, yeah.
Yeah. Also in terms of visuals, I think the flip side of that is, another one of my picks is Avatar, which technically not a 2000s movie, but it came out like really late 2009, was in theaters well into the 2010s, and I give it leeway because I really don't think you can talk about this decade without mentioning Avatar. So this was echoed also by Angel. In terms of the way everything has looked for CGI this decade, I don't see how you can't credit Avatar for that. Like, everything now looks like that movie did. A lot of people have said not as good. Like, it looks sort of fake and, like, everything moves wrong, kind of. Which, I don't know too much about that, but I would second those opinions. In any case, like you were saying, like, the visuals with Inception, I think it either looks like that or it looks like Avatar.
I would agree
Every
with you
MCU
completely.
movie looks like Avatar.
I will say that Avatar's actually aged fairly well. I just watched about half of it the other day. The thing that does it for me is that they combine some practical effects with CGI.
Yeah, it still
Any
looks
use
really
of practical
good.
effects I'm really happy about, because this would have been a much easier film to go overwhelmingly all CGI. Mm-hmm. But the little tidbits of practicalness, I think, made it stand out a lot too.
Yeah, second that. So then my other pick was The Social Network. I was going back and forth on this, but then I talked to a couple people and I kind of realized, like, I think Social Network was influential, not only, like, I mean, a bit culturally, because it shows a lot of, like, how we got to, like, where we are with social media, and it, like, is sort of the origin story of all that. But also, I think it sparked a lot of much better than normal based on a true story movies, where it was like, because that's a true story, probably embellished a lot, but it was awesome and, like, looked really cool, was really stylish. And I don't think you get stuff like The Big Short or Spotlight. True story movie, I think, doesn't mean what it used to because of The Social Network. And that was echoed by Anonymous 2, Anne, and my mom. I'm going to run through everyone else's picks here, hopefully quickly, but if you guys want to comment, go ahead. So a popular one was Moonlight, so we had Anonymous 1,
I had that
Mike,
down originally.
Yeah, Mike, Angel, and Sarah all put that one. I didn't love it, but I see where they're coming from. Moonlight comes up a lot on this list. I don't think me not liking it is because of it. I think that's a personal thing. Like, it just didn't really jam with me. But I do think it's really good. I don't know that it's necessarily sparked anything, but it tells like a story in a way that hasn't really been done before, where it takes a look at like the three sections of the guy's life, and they aren't like super connected to each other. Like they are a bit, but like it doesn't feel like you watched one story. It feels like you watched three.
It felt like it was three different directors for every part of the life, at least how I felt. But I was also in a terrible mood the day I watched it, so I can't say too much about it.
Yeah, I don't know about three different directors, but it did feel like three different stories. I mean, the three actors play the character very differently, which I think is good because I think the point of it is that he's really different in all three sections, particularly the last one.
Again, a film with a great color palette, a great use of colors in film. The
blues.
The blue tone of the moonlight is very good on the beach.
Yeah, so if anyone who said that wants to justify it, feel free to write in. I would agree with that. I wouldn't have put it myself, but I agree with it. Another one that came up a lot, Hunger Games.
Yeah.
That came up twice. I guess it's not a lot.
Meh.
And Carson both said Hunger Games. I would agree with that in that it continued like the YA book adaptation thing, because you had like Divergent and stuff. Fury Road was John and Carson both said that one. Practical VFX is huge in that, and it showed that you don't have to do CGI to look awesome, and actually it kind of looks better with practical. I don't know if we're seeing a resurgence of it, but there's been more of it.
Strong performances too in that one.
Yes, strong performances. Okay, and then we have Endgame. Mike and Tabana both said that. I would agree with that in a cultural sense. I don't think Endgame is going to spark anything that it hasn't, that like the MCU hasn't already. It was just kind of inevitable, but like
Thanos.
Like Thanos, yes.
If only we could snap all the remakes away.
Honestly, I'd be down for that. Big Hero 6 is something that came up twice from Tobana and Natalia. It was good. I don't know that it had like any kind of impact.
Do you think I'd like it?
I don't think you'd love it, but it's good.
I'll try it.
Like, yeah, it's worth trying. Okay, we have two. Well, this is mostly from my family. It had a lot of echoes. Both my parents said The Help.
Very good.
And then both my parents and my sister Lauren all said The Hate U Give, which that's a super underrated movie, I think.
I don't think I've even heard of The Hate U Give.
It went way under the radar last October. It's based on a book. Amanda Stenberg is the lead.
I'll write it down here.
It's really good. Also Frozen, Anonymous 2 and 3 said that. I don't know who they are. But I would say, yeah, I mean, it made a ton of money. It may not have been influential in, like, film circles, but in terms of kids born after, like, 2005, it was huge, so...
In the nicest way possible. I hate Frozen. I hate Frozen so much. Like, do you want to build a snowman? No, I don't. Nor do I want to hear everyone singing Let It Go at every... Like, there's a couple songs you hear at every karaoke joint. Everyone wants to sing Let It Go. There was a solid 3 months where that's all anyone sang. I get it. It's a decent movie, but it's so overrated.
It's going to come up a few times in Overrated. I think my youngest sister probably watched that 50 times after it came out. So I think I've only seen it once, but I feel like I've seen it like 4 times just from like walking past her watch it. And also, like, you go to any, I mean, not so much anymore, but like after it came out, you go to any elementary school and Elsa, Olaf, and Anna combined are on literally every backpack.
Every
somewhere.
Single middle school is producing that as a show right now.
Yeah.
But there are better Disney movies that should have the respect that Frozen has, like Inside Out, for example.
Yes, that will come up a lot later in the show. I'm just going to list off some other ones, and again, you can comment if you want. Love, Simon is another one that got echoed by my mom and Lauren. I hope that is going to be influential on other movies. So far, I don't feel like we've seen anything that's like really following and like drafting off it, but like it's only been out for like a year or so maybe there's still time for that. Birdman, this is Anonymous 1, says Birdman, Arrival, The Wind Rises, which I think is an anime I haven't heard of, and The Big Short. Oh, and then my dad also said The Big Short.
Whoever said Birdman, thank you, because I'm going to talk about Birdman a lot during this. I love Birdman.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Then Mike Raffle, we already said he did Joker, Hereditary, and Thor Ragnarok. I haven't seen either of those.
You ever seen Hereditary?
I tried, but I couldn't get through it. I know a lot of people say
the build-up is worth it. There's not one moment in that movie you feel like something couldn't happen. And I think Toni Collette could have gotten an Oscar for her performance in that.
Yeah, I heard she was good.
Did really well.
Okay, John says Suicide Squad because it showed everyone what not to do. Yeah, I think a few people would echo him on that. Also, Bridesmaids, which
Really?
I agree with. I agree with that because, like, I don't think big budget comedies did great this decade. They kind of weren't great, but Bridesmaids sparked like a lot of like not romantic comedy but female driven comedies like that did pretty good. Like we have a lot of stuff that has come after that, I think, like Bad Moms, Rough Night, anything with Melissa McCarthy.
Book Club?
Book Club. I don't feel like Book Club's okay. Yeah, Book Club is a little bit of a byproduct of that. Although that's all like older actresses. That was kind of a trend that didn't really exist before Bridesmaids, I think. Yeah. And like that got awards attention too. I didn't think it was amazing, but it deserved like the credit that it got.
It's been on my watch list for like 3 years now. I need to watch it eventually.
Some other answers. Anonymous 2 says Catfish. Anonymous 3 says Gasland and Blackfish. Gasland, I know, is a documentary. I've seen posters for it in the film department at Drexel. Anne says Lady Bird, American Sniper, and Zero Dark 30. I haven't seen the last two of those, but I'd concur. They were a pretty big deal. Zero Dark 30 for sure shows like a big event of the decade. Tabana says Isle of Dogs.
Good movie. Well, not great. I mean, it's not my favorite of Wes Anderson, but I'm a Wes Anderson guy.
It was solid, though. Like, I mean, the cast,
good
for
cast.
Sure, is freaking amazing.
I don't think Wes Anderson has had a bad cast.
I would agree with that. He probably is one of the best connected people in terms of actors.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, that one was pretty good. Like, I'm not a dog lover, so I don't think it was... I mean, I don't dislike dogs, but I don't go nuts for them like a lot of people do. But, yeah, I thought that one was pretty good. I don't know exactly in what way it could have been influential in like a cultural sense, except maybe that like, I mean, it captured everyone's love of dogs and also is like actually kind of mean to them. Like,
yeah,
I want to say there's a couple of dog deaths in that movie.
There's a couple.
Joe said Bohemian Rhapsody, 127 Hours, Steve Jobs, and Margin Call. Angel says Scott Pilgrim, which I would concur with. I love that. Angel also said The Favorite.
Good movie.
That was pretty good.
Good movie.
And then Tom says Insidious and Birdman. Carson says Black Panther. Surprised no one else put that. Natalia says Crazy Rich Asians, Coco, Rocket Man, and Greatest Showman. Sarah says Fences, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I'm really glad that one got a shout out. Short Term 12.
3 Billboards was incredible, though. That comes up again on my list a couple times.
Yeah, that was... Yeah, I thought that should have won. And then Dallas Buyers Club.
Another good one.
I didn't love that, but I don't disagree with that as a choice. And then my mom said Spotlight. My dad says 50 Shades negatively. Which unfortunately I have to agree with. It did it left its mark. I think the thing that I'm upset the most about with 50 Shades is I haven't seen any of them. I'm sure they're bad, but like I'm kind of pissed off that like now we can't use that title for anything else because it is such a good title. Like a spy thriller called 50 Shades of Grey sounds like the most awesome movie ever. But like now that title is taken.
Yeah, I wouldn't walk into that movie. I think you'd be pretty surprised, Evan.
Well, no, I mean, I know what it is. It's like weird porn, basically. It just, doesn't that sound like such a good title for like something else? Like, that, like...
I know that my grandma was reading the books. That's all I know.
Oh, God. Just a couple more picks for these. We had, my dad also said Ex Machina. I think that... I don't know exactly how it might have been influential. I guess because of tech. That might be influential. It might be like prophetic influential in that like that's where we're going. A little bit like The Social Network in that way, although obviously not a true story. But like kind of predicting what's to come. And then Lauren said Gifted. It was a kind of a smaller movie. I think I dragged her to that, but I guess she ended up liking it. It's Chris Evans and McKenna Grace, who's like a up-and-coming child actress, is like really smart. It's like Good Will Hunting, but for like a 7-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't half bad. Okay. Do we have anything else we want to say for influential?
No.
Okay, so we'll move into overrated.
So here we go to most overrated movies of the decade. I would have to say that the first one for me was Grand Budapest Hotel. I know that, others in this podcast and the specific episode, I know you guys were saying that it's a great movie, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. But I personally did not like it. I thought it was very, it was very slow. The humor was really dry, and I don't know. It wasn't my favorites, but a lot of people loved this film, absolutely adored this film. It's Wes Anderson, so of course people are going to be like, whoa. And this might be biased because I'm not that big of a fan of Wes Anderson, but against popular belief. But yeah, I didn't really think it was that great of a film, and thought it was overrated. Number 2, I thought Inception was definitely overrated. I mean, again, I know I just went off on how influential it was, and that I still stand by, but it still just wasn't my personal favorite. I thought it was overrated. Again, yeah, Leo did a great film, and it was a very different concept, and it was new and exciting, and that's why people loved it. But, it was too long, in my opinion. I thought it was way too overdrawn. It was more of how do you say it? It was more of a action-focused type movie, and focusing on again, the sets, how they rotate, focusing on the slow motions, focusing on the strategic planning, and instead of more of like the cinematography itself and the plot development and the characters themselves, the character development. There was nothing there, really. I thought it was very overrated. Another overrated movie that a lot of people are gonna not be happy to hear about. I thought Moonlight was overrated. I understood the plot. My favorite aspect of that movie is that it represented a different story that doesn't get represented that often, and I will say the one thing that Moonlight did very well was shine light on very real problems within racism, within, society, within social classes, like all of that. And that it did a phenomenal job in. But overall, I didn't really like it. Out of all the 24 films, I thought it was, it was all right. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything that captivated my attention. And the fourth one, I would say Birdman. I thought that was incredibly overrated. It was so, again, long and drawn out. And I think it was a bit too focused on fantasy, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It was focused on kind of just some things that just wouldn't happen. And I know it had a deeper meaning and an underlying meaning, each scene and the plot and the characters and everything. But it just wasn't... I thought maybe it was a bit too abstract, or maybe it was a bit too fictional for me. But yeah, I thought it was a bit overrated. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying any of these movies are bad. Each one has, their golden eggs, They have really, really good aspects to them, but I that's very different from overrated. And lastly, I thought Get Out was a bit overrated. I just recently watched that. I decided to wait until all the frenzy and the excitement and everything passed to properly sit down and watch it without any influence. It was a great movie. Very, very good movie. Again, it was something different. Again, it showed a lot of issues with racism and class. And I thought it was great. I thought the acting was crazy, was phenomenal. But I thought it was a bit overrated. I think people were just going crazy about it because, again, the aspect that it was something new, that this was a completely new director or new person to the directing community. Jordan Peele, he's not really known for directing. He's more known for comedy. But I thought it was overrated, and I think that exact aspect made it overrated, or made it not one of, it made me not go crazy for it, was that I thought it was there was too much comedy in it. For a horror / thriller, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any, but I think if there's too much comedy or too much comical relief, the film lose its sense of, you lose the audience a little bit in the sense that, especially with the ending. I thought the ending was a bit, to be honest, I think it was very overrated because the ending wasn't that great. There, point blank. And the ending wasn't that great because it was focused on being funny. It was focused on having like a relief, a sigh at the end, and that's not. It was kind of out of place. I don't want to spoil the ending, but it was just, yeah. In my opinion, I thought it was a very overrated film because the ending wasn't that great. Also because, this isn't the first time that we see these topics. I mean, of course, this is very, very new, but I don't know. It was a bit overrated. Great film, overrated.
Yeah, Jelani, you can go ahead.
All right, so these top 3 are movies that were hyped up for me before I saw them, and I think it kind of ruined it. But I also saw them years after they were released, all except the second one. I put Inception at the top. I'm so sorry to break your heart, Evan.
No, it's totally fair. I still love it, but it is a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, when I went to the movie theater to see some other movie. I completely forget, but it was in the mall, and it might have been release day or something, but the line for this movie and the amount of black-haired teenagers standing outside the door was ridiculous.
What was the name of it? I think you cut out when you said the name.
I said it was Inception? What?
Oh, it isn't. Oh, I thought you moved on.
No, I was about to move on. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you... Okay.
He blocks out anything bad about Inception, so...
Okay, not true. Although I will deny it because I know enough about it to say that, like, any... Overrated is a fair criticism. Any criticism of the actual movie, I can refute.
You're going to hear another movie title dubbed in over anything bad about Inception.
Yeah. I'll just throw in, like... Yeah, I'll throw in Boyhood instead. Okay, but yeah, sorry, keep going.
The Revenant, I put second. I think audiences or whoever had been hyping up Leo about getting his Oscar, then he finally got it for this movie, and then I saw like maybe half of this movie, and I was like, this is what he won an Oscar for? He's just grunting and screaming and eating raw meat the entire movie. So I didn't even finish that. And then I feel bad for saying this because I love comic book movies, but I put Scott Pilgrim. It was funny, but I didn't get all of the credit and praise it got. I just didn't understand that. It's like it was okay.
If you enjoy it, you love it because like every little thing in it is makes it so much more fun. But if you're kind of like then it gets a little annoying.
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying with that. As much as I do love it,
Hugo was number 4. Didn't this win like an award or something?
I actually liked
so.
Hugo.
I didn't get it. I think I saw it when I was young. Like, my cousin took me to the theater to see it, and I didn't get it. At first, it was about him being in a freaking clock or something and building a robot, and then it was about film, and I was like, what? I didn't understand that.
I think it's worth you giving a rewatch.
Probably.
It's very heartwarming, I think.
Probably.
It's very heartwarming.
Yeah, it was also based on the book too. That it was like 400 pages of pictures and like 50 of text. I never read it, but you
didn't even have to read it. You could just look at it. It's all pictures.
Well, right, because like every kid in 5th grade was like, "Hey, look, I'm reading this big book," and then like you look at it, it's like, "Oh no, you're reading like a novella at best with like a picture book disguised as like Harry Potter." What was your other pick though?
I don't know exactly how much praise it got, but I just saw like an IMDb rating, and I needed a 5th movie, so I was just like, I'll put this here. I didn't like it all that much. I found it funny, but I put the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a long conversation right now.
Yeah.
No. Whoa. This is one of the best movies. This movie aesthetically was the most This is the best film of Wes Anderson's career. The cast was incredible. The script was incredible.
It was a lot of pink.
It was a lot of many colors. I mean, it was perfect. It was one of the few films that I took a hiatus from acting for about 2 years, and then this movie made me go back to it. I thought this comes up all over my list. It's almost. Is this what you're talking about, Evan?
No, I'm not. I didn't know. I didn't look at Jelani.
Evan
picks.
said something in the categories
It's not
was
this.
going to make
I
me
didn't
mad.
know Jelani was going to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Please explain to me why this is overrated.
I'm not gonna do that. It had its funny moments, but it was just, I just found it boring. Like, I don't.
It's very dry humor. It's very British. It's very dry. Like very almost like Larry David-ish humor, but with a flair. Larry David's my hero, so I associate him to everything.
The only specific part of the movie I remember is when they were like punching each other back to back, and I don't even remember the reason why. They were like in a church or something.
I would highly recommend giving it a rewatch. It's just so tight, I think. I think it's random, it's witty, it's very Wes Anderson, but I think it's one of his tightest scripts.
Okay, before we move on, there is something I meant to say with overrated, and I think overrated and underrated depends a lot on what circles you're in.
Yeah.
Because, like, some people... So, we've all mentioned Inception as overrated. My parents, at least my dad, put it as underrated, and I was like, how can you call it underrated? And he said, well... you're the only one I ever hear talk about it, so I guess in that sense it is. I mean, I just can't divorce it from being so good, but like I guess he's right. Like, I guess that's just kind of a thing. Like, if you're our age, you think all the I don't know, because I guess older people think superhero movies are overrated too. But like everyone our age, I think thinks like Forrest Gump is overrated. But if you're like older than like 35 or something, it's like a huge deal. We were just getting into a discussion about this this past week with my family, because like everyone like of the older generation was like, oh, you don't get it, it's so good, but everyone like under 25 is like,
I loved it.
All right.
Well,
I like Forrest Gump.
mentally I'm 40 and divorced, so like my film opinions differ a little bit, but
right, but like we didn't live through any of that time, so we don't have like the same context. But like to us, it's way overrated. What I'm trying to say with this is, like, I think it depends what you keep hearing about. That really depends on, like, who you talk to, what sites you're on. Because if you're, like, IMDb loves Chris Nolan, so I could never think of him as underrated. But I think to, like, average filmgoers, he's someone that they're like, oh, yeah, he's all right. Or, like, oh, he doesn't get enough credit because, like, there's also a distinction of, like, does it make too much money? Or is it overrated? Because, like, Minions made way too much money. But I wouldn't say it's overrated. Nobody likes it. Like, I mean, under the age of 7, nobody likes it. I mean, half the movie's not even in a language that anyone understands. So, or, okay, you can understand it. But, like... yeah, it's like... It's like gibberish plus, like, a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of English, I think.
so it's how I talk after midnight. For the most part.
Right, but it's a whole movie of that with little frickin' banana head guys. Long and short of it, overrated and underrated depends on what circles you're in. Let's continue. I'm sorry. Jelani, was that all your choices?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mason, I think we've already gotten into a couple of yours, but...
Oh, we have not gotten into my overrated ones yet, even remotely.
Okay.
Every single Disney remake.
Oh, yeah.
Fully agree.
I will not be able to say
100%.
that enough. I refuse. I have embargoed the Disney remake. I will not step foot. You cannot pay me to step foot in Aladdin.
Yep.
You could not pay me to step foot in The Lion King. These are classic movies. I don't need a bad CGI version. Guess what? They're not even live action, as they say. It's just CGI.
Photorealistic,
It's
I believe,
just
is the
CGI.
term.
I just don't see the appeal. I really don't. Keep the classics, write some new material. It's not hard to write new material. You have some of the highest paid writers on the planet and in the industry, but could you write something new? Is it that hard? I'm very intense about that.
People don't... I don't think a lot of people like a lot of these remakes. The only one I'm going to see is Mulan, because that's my childhood. Like, that...
They took all the songs out and cut half the characters.
I know. I'm not expecting... I don't think it's necessarily going to be great, but my siblings and I all loved that growing up, so we kind of are obligated. But aside from that, agree with everything else, including the ones that I've enjoyed. Like, I haven't really enjoyed any, but, like, including the ones that aren't half bad, like, yeah, they're totally unnecessary.
Know what else is on there? Avengers Endgame. Very overrated.
You know what?
A lot of people...
I can take that. I'll take that. I'll eat that. Yeah.
I just think that it's not a bad movie. But the way it's hyped and the way it took over movie theaters where smaller budget films weren't really so many good movies came out at the time of Avengers Endgame. So many. Got completely snubbed for the most part. They're not bad movies, but my thing is it's people our age really only care about Marvel movies now.
Yeah,
That's what the market's dominated by.
Yeah, a lot of people are echoing you on this. We've got Kelsey, Anonymous 3, Tom Dragna, and Lauren all say that it's overrated. Tom adds, can I just say all the Marvel movies? Like, they're not that bad. They just aren't the greatest thing ever. Yeah. That was verbatim what he put in the answering box, which I love that he didn't. That he decided not to put 3 answers, but went off on Marvel instead. My dad also said all superhero movies are overrated, which, yeah, they are. People agree on that, it seems like.
I also really didn't like Bird Box.
Okay.
I just think
that was the one where you got to, like, pick what happened.
No, that was Bandersnatch.
No, that's Bandersnatch.
Oh, okay.
I just felt that Bird Box came out right after A Quiet Place, which I think was great. The sound design was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But it seemed pretty much just reskinning A Quiet Place with a somewhat different theme. I just felt like I was watching the same movie again. It was so hyped up. I sat down and watched it, and I was like, nothing special. It didn't stand out to me. Yeah, so the last one I had on there was Rogue One.
Yep. Yes.
Rogue One.
Yes.
So hard to agree. I have tried to get like a dozen people to sell me on that, and none of them have been able to do it.
I thought it had no flavor to it, very little heart in it, and it just didn't work. I did think they did a great job on bringing back Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin in CGI. I liked seeing him. That's about it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, I don't mind if people like it. It's just like, it felt so generic. The characters were, there was so much wrong with the characters. Also, like, when the guy, I can't think of his name, I want to say Cassian. He says, like, your father would be proud of you. Can we please stop using that line?
Yeah.
Sorry, but like that, we've got company. I want to say there's a couple others. I want to bring an air horn to the theater every time there's like a cliche line that's used and just set it off whenever it happens.
Oh, what about you just don't get it, do you?
Oh, yes, that one.
It's funny because I just put that line into a script. It's so overused.
I don't get as annoyed with that one, but like, how many times has that line, your father would have been proud of you? Like, seriously. And also, like, it doesn't make sense in Rogue One. Yeah. Like, the context they put it in, it's like, that was never a thing for her. And that didn't end any, like, arcs or anything.
Just cliche.
Apologize to everyone who likes it, but I will not.
I don't.
I will not. I went back and read my review for that. And, like, I think I put at the top of it, like, if you like this, don't read this. I'm going to tear it apart. Like, I don't really do reviews anymore, but of the ones that I've done, I think that is the most emotionally charged and most, like, I just go off. It's that bad. Anyway.
That's all I got. It's all you, buddy.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
Oh, I also hate, sorry to add on to your movie cliche quote, I also hate it's not what blank would want.
That's a good one. I wouldn't have thought of that as a cliche, but yeah, that's used so much.
I've heard that so many times, especially if like they'll say it if a character is dead and they're supposed to be influencing the plot somehow, and I just cannot stand that line at all.
Yeah, it's used way too much. So some stuff that you guys said was echoed. Jelani, you said The Revenant. Angel and Carson both put that as well.
Good.
And then in terms of the live action remakes, my mom and Lauren both put The Lion King. Hard to agree. I didn't see it. I think that's on my worst I didn't see list. And then Beauty and the Beast, Anonymous 1, put that. That, I think, was what turned me off to live action remakes. Like, because I think a couple of the ones before that were okay, but then that one was just so unnecessary, made a crap load of money. I think it's still like 12th biggest grossing movie ever or something. Other ones that came up a lot, Frozen was said by Anonymous 1 and John.
Very fair.
I'd agree with that. Like, did either... You guys didn't mention that one, did you?
No.
Let me check. I actually may have. I'm going to say it now if I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't like Frozen.
I think especially if you had little kids in your life, or not even that little, just like anyone like 12 or under, anyone who enjoyed singing Let It Go and has Elsa merchandise, like...
Yep.
If you were a parent whose kids sang that a lot, I guarantee you started buying more wine. Guarantee you.
Yeah, maybe something a little stronger than that. So, Guardians of the Galaxy. I said that one. I said that one, and said that one, and Anonymous won. Yeah, I don't get the appeal with that. Like, I get how much people liked Avengers. I thought Avengers was actually pretty good. I think it's because I don't enjoy Marvel humor, and that's like all jokes. Like, I think there's maybe 2 lines in that movie that I laughed at.
Good soundtrack, though.
Okay soundtrack. Baby Driver kills it with soundtrack. I didn't see the second one, but I'm sure I would say it was overrated too. They're not terrible, but like honestly, it's been done before, and everyone acts like it was like this revolutionary thing, which maybe for Marvel it was, but come on, like it's a worse version of Pirates of the Caribbean. That's all I see it as, and it's like not funny. I genuinely don't think it's funny, except Drax's line about like stuff not going over his head. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. Aside from that, no. Avatar, Mike Raffle said that, and so did Angel. La La Land from Sarah.
Good.
Sarah and both of my parents said La La Land.
Good.
Which, as much as you like it,
fair. You know what? Fair enough.
It got more Oscars nominations than it deserved. Maybe not wins, but nominations.
Here's what I will say about La La Land, because I will talk about that more later. I have a very sentimental relationship with it because I did see it in theaters 7 times.
Yeah, well, and you told me like the first 3 you didn't like.
Jesus.
The first 2 I didn't like it. And
okay,
then
but
it grew
still,
on me progressively.
Like, you gotta see where people are coming from with this.
7.
No, I'm saying 5 times after saying you didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm an amiable guy.
I mean, I guess there was nothing else good at the time. Oh no, Split was out.
I like Split.
I prefer love stories where they don't end up together.
Okay.
All right.
That's what I prefer, and I thought
I don't
the
think
beginning
that's
of the movie
that big of a factor.
The
though.
beginning
like,
of the story comes on too strong with the musical numbers at first. Like the first one's a bit much, but then I think it gets progressively more poignant.
I also don't like musicals, so
it's not bad, but you can see where people are coming from with Overrated, right?
Yes, I can at least agree with that. I agree with that more than I do with Grand Budapest.
Yeah,
I can at least support this one.
And also, again, it depends on what circles
this really is more of a taste thing. But I will say the ending of the film is beautiful. That I will stick with.
I'd agree with that. Other ones that came up a bit, Hunger Games is mentioned twice. Anne and Natalia both said that. I'd agree. It was decent, but like, I mean, if you were not in middle school, I can see how you don't see what the big deal is, because like it was a big deal when I was in middle school. I remember because I think it was in like 7th grade when it came out, and everyone read those books.
Yep.
Pitch Perfect, Natalia and my mom both put that one. I don't know if it's so overrated anymore. At the time, for sure.
Oh, okay.
First one was good. Sequels suck.
I didn't see the sequels. I didn't enjoy that, but I don't think they're bad. Like, that's very much a taste thing. It got a little bit overhyped at the time, I think. Nowadays, I don't think anyone's singing its praises too much, pun intended. But, like, it was Big back when it first came out. Gravity, John and Carson both said that.
That was a long movie to sit through, and it was not great.
I haven't seen it, but I hate Sandra Bullock, so I can't imagine I'd like it that much.
If you would like to watch Sandra Bullock float in space for 2 hours talking to herself, this is the movie for you.
I like Quaron, though, so in that way, I think I might. But also, like, I feel like you can't watch that on, like, a TV or a computer because, like, it's such an IMAX movie, so I don't think I would get the full effect. And to be fair, I should have said I watched Rogue One on my laptop, so that might not have been the experience, because I know that was another one that, like, it's a big one to see in the theater. I don't give it any more slack because of that, but I will say that, like, I didn't get the spectacle.
You could have watched Rogue One in a literally garbage can because it's trash. I'm sorry.
Hard agree. But I want to give that caveat just because, like, I think that's a reason people enjoy it, because it's a very pretty movie. It had decent action, and I watched it on a tablet. So, like,
who paid you to say that?
What?
So you liked Rogue One a little bit. Did you just say something positive about Rogue One?
I didn't say I liked it. I said it was pretty and it had okay action. That, like, there are awful movies that you can say the same for. Other ones, The King's Speech, Joe and Sarah both said that. Yeah. I'd agree only because I don't think it's overrated in like a popularity sense. I mean, I get that Inception shouldn't have won Best Picture that year. Like, that's not an Oscar bait movie. But you had The Social Network up that year with David Fincher, possibly the best director ever, and Aaron Sorkin writing it, one of the best writers ever. A great cast. Like, how does that get overshadowed by King's Speech? Like, there is just no contest between
I didn't
those
think
two.
The King's Speech was bad. I thought the cast of Jeffrey Rush and Colin Firth were great, but I think the pacing was just off.
It's not a bad movie, but when
issue.
you have The Social Network, which on paper, best movie ever, like in terms of like the talent that was put into it, I don't see how you can make an argument that The King's Speech is a better movie, like in an objective
poignant.
craft sense. So is The Social Network. I get choked up at the end of The Social Network.
You know, I've never actually seen The Social Network.
Me neither.
Oh, you got to. Another one that was repeated a lot, I said this, and so did Carson, Sarah, and my mom, Boyhood.
Yeah.
Really overrated. Maybe not in like a popularity stance. People went nuts over it when it first came out, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's impressive you did this with like the same actors, but it's a lame movie. Yeah. Nothing happens.
Good movie to watch once.
It's a good movie to watch in like 10-minute segments. If that was like a YouTube series, because that's basically what it is. Like,
it's like a vlog.
How different is like the premise that they used than like any TV show? You brought back the same actors for like 12 years. Okay, 12-season TV series. And I agree that like you don't have a script to start. You just kind of like let it evolve. That's a cool process. Still, you can make something out of it. Like, there's a reason. I think that's a testament to why like you need stuff to happen.
It was
in
too
your movie.
inconsistent.
Well, it just doesn't connect to anything. It's like, it's a highlight reel of this kid's life. I already harped on this in the 3-act structure episode, so I won't do it too much more. But a lot of people put this, so I'm going to try to speak to that. It may be impressive, and it may be kind of... Like, I get the emotional thing they're going for. That, like, yes, this is reflective of, like, how a lot of people's lives are where not a lot happens. But that doesn't mean you can't give it some kind of, like, connection to each day-to-day basis. A lot of us don't have anything going on, but you can narrow stuff down and make a story out of anyone's life. You just got to pick the right moments, and they just didn't pick the right moments for that.
Yeah.
So I get why it was a big deal. I disagree with its hype. Anonymous one says Incredibles 2 and Skyfall. I don't think either of them are super overrated, but yeah, I see where they're coming from. Mike Raffles says The Visit, Cabin in the Woods, Us, and American Sniper.
I love Cabin in the Woods. That's on here before. I think Cabin in the Woods is brilliant, and I'll explain why when I get to it.
John says Isle of Dogs, which I get. I don't think it's super overrated, but I get it. Interstellar. I think some people consider that underrated. I think it's interesting when you can say that something is both overrated and underrated when you have people who say both. I think that means you've got
all
like,
about
really
the circles you travel in, like you said.
Well, yeah, but like I've seen answers on like the same questionnaire where like it's like general consensus, it's both overrated and underrated, which I think is really cool. I think that means that, I mean, I love Nolan, so I'll keep defending him. But like I think he really did something special in that sense. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, fully agree with that.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
It's overrated though. We don't have to get into that now. Yeah. It comes up a couple times later, but it wasn't as good as people said, I think. Or it's probably going to get a lot of awards that aren't really deserved. Anonymous 2 says 50 Shades of Grey, Birdman, 21 Jump Street, 21 and Magic
Jump
Mike.
Street? They put 21 Jump Street on the list?
I see where they're coming with.
You kidding me?
I think
How the hell do you group 21 Jump Street and Birdman?
Well, it's overrated.
It's not overrated.
It's not overrated. It was so underrated.
Yeah, it's not overrated.
Necessarily.
I'd say it's in the middle.
Which one? Jump Street?
Yeah.
I think today it's hard to call Jump Street overrated. A little bit, but like at the time it was a big deal, I know. Anonymous 3 says Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that. I'm surprised how little Infinity War comes up in this list. Like I think maybe it's because Endgame overshadowed it, but I would have thought more people would have put it, especially considering that like the MCU has gotten a decent amount of attention here. Anne says The Favorite, which I would... Okay, in an award sense, yes. It maybe got a little more attention than it deserved. I enjoyed it. I mean, the acting in it, phenomenal. And again, I'm not the greatest judge of that, but I mean, Mason, you endorse it, so I believe it's probably pretty good since you have a lot of opinions on that. Also, Mud and Silver Linings Playbook. Joe says Life of Pi, Ted 2, Iron Man 2, and The Social Network. I get all of those. I didn't see any of those first three, so I'm not really sure. Seth says Deathly Hallows Part 2, which as much as I love Harry Potter... I
agree.
Yeah, it maybe gets a little more praise than it deserves. Awesome movie, though.
Completely cut off Remus Lupin's character arc in that book, though. I know that doesn't matter too much, but...
Yeah, but it's an awesome movie.
You know, it's decent. It's decent.
Angel says Joker, which I can see. It's a little early to call, but like it's getting a lot of attention, so I don't think it's unfair to say it's overrated. He also says Call Me By Your Name and Blue is the Warmest Color.
I thought Call Me By Your Name was actually quite underrated, and I think the soundtrack for that's nearly perfect, too.
I still got to get around to it. I heard it was pretty good.
I loved it.
And I
loved it.
I don't love Timothée Chalamet, mostly because he's a dick in Lady Bird, but I've heard he's an okay person in real life.
I haven't seen Lady Bird yet, but I've seen all his other work, and I actually really enjoy him.
And then he also said Avatar and the Revenant. Tom added Avengers, which, I mean, that's been echoed. And then he said, like, all the Marvel movies, basically. Carson says American Sniper, and that got echoed. And The Babadook.
Yeah, Babadook wasn't great.
Natalia says Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Don't think there's any contention on that. That was a big deal. Also, Suicide Squad, which...
That's not an argument.
That's not... People thought it was overrated?
I think it depends, because, like... My brother actually really enjoys it, and actually someone has it as a favorite on here. I guess I'll just say who. Joe has it as a favorite on here. He's also not, like, he's older. Like, he's my uncle, so he's not, like, in nerd circles as much like we are.
Oh, okay.
I think there's pressure among, like, people who are fans to hate on it, and I don't think he, like, feels any of that because he just kind of saw it like most people probably did. Whereas, like, most of this... poll is like 20-somethings. Yeah. You know, there's like generational differences there. But also, like, I can see how people enjoyed it. I still don't think it's good. Especially if you look at, again, there's like the distinction between overrated and making money. And it definitely made more money than it deserves. So I don't think it's totally unfair to put it on here. And then Natalia also said Edge of 17. Anonymous 2 and Sarah both put Wolf of Wall Street.
Really?
Which I would agree with. Yeah, not so much. I don't really get Scorsese. I want to like him. But,
I love Scorsese.
But yeah, I mean, Wolf of Wall Street, I totally see where that's coming from.
I think that's the only Scorsese film I haven't finished.
Well, it is mad long.
It is very, yeah.
Not as long as The Irishman, but...
I love The Irishman. I'll get into that later, but I loved it.
I am an hour and a half into it and can't bring myself to keep watching it.
It needs to be watched in full. It needs to be watched in full.
It's 3.5 hours.
It's worth it.
How does he expect people to find that
I did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you also saw La La Land 7 times, so you're willing to, like, do stuff.
Fair enough.
And then Sarah also said Silver Linings Playbook. My mom said Despicable Me, which I agree with. I think the first one has some heart to it. Steve Carell's voice is kind of funny. But yeah, it's not if that was Pixar, I've talked to some people about this, like, if Disney came out with Despicable Me, it would be considered a lot worse than it is.
Yeah.
My dad said all of Star Wars and all superhero movies. No argument on that.
I agree.
And then he said Bright, the Netflix movie.
Was that overrated? I thought people hated that.
I think in this case, maybe overhyped is a better word, because it was a huge... They advertised that so much, I remember.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was trash. Lindsay Ellis has a whole video about that. And then he said Tower Heist, which you guys may not have heard of. My brother and I both put that on underrated.
That was with Eddie Murphy, right? I didn't see the movie. I just know it had Eddie Murphy.
If you didn't see it, I'm surprised you remember it, because it went way under the radar. I think a lot of the hate for it is because Brett Ratner directs it, and he's apparently a garbage human being, and also ruined X-Men. So, yeah, he's that director. I don't know what else he's done, but I've heard he's like just a terrible person. My brother and my dad and I saw that in theaters, so I was probably like 12 or 13, which great age to see it. You know, you laugh at everything at that age, so... But I still enjoy it. It's like it's Ben Stiller, Eddie Murphy, Casey Affleck, Tia Leone. I'm gonna mess up the pronunciation here. Gabori Sibde. I don't know how to say it, but she was Precious. And then Michael Pena and Alan Arkin, or no, Alan Alda, not Alan Arkin. They're all in it. It's pretty funny. It's not a half bad story.
Wait, I might have seen this.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's something that you would expect to like have got, and I think it got a lot of advertising at the time, but then after it came out, like, I've never heard anyone outside of me and my brother talk about it, but we both love it. And I think that's why my dad put it as overrated, because we love it. But I think that's where he's coming from with that, because I have not heard like anyone else talk about that. And then my other three picks are Argo, which I don't think is terrible. I don't get the appeal. And then Deadpool. Not bad, but not nearly as good as people have been saying. Like,
That's fair.
I enjoyed the second one a lot more. The first one, I don't think it's actually that funny. I don't think it's as groundbreaking as people think it is. Like, for superhero movies, I get it. Like, no one had ever gone there at that point, but like, other movies have. It's not like it's never been done.
I remember cracking up in the theaters. I went to go see it with my friends, and then my second watch through, I wasn't laughing as much, and I was like, wait, I remember laughing at a lot more of these jokes before, and I didn't find it as funny the second time.
Well, I think that was my thing too, because I think they used a lot of the better jokes in the trailer, so I'd already heard them going in. So that's the end of part 1. Thanks for listening to this, and remember to send in comments to erw58@drexel.edu, like us on Facebook, subscribe to the show wherever you're listening, and leave us ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. This decade recap is also continued in part 2, where we cover most underrated, worst/worst you didn't see, best character, best scene, and favorites. Thanks for listening.